from the color of blood. And in many ways, there is a Hindi expression that the खून का बदला खून, here सिंदूर का बदला खून होगा, that is blood in response to what they've done to the Sindoor.
All right, Ambassador Sandhu, there's a question for you. Given your experience in Washington, how would you assess the U.S. administration's current position on the India-Pakistan standoff? Has there been a shift in tone or a policy from previous administrations?
So, I would give three aspects which the American policy and larger population needs to keep in mind. First is the terrorist attack. As our leader just mentioned, that this was a thought out, a focused operation, essentially on the terrorists and terrorist strike. Kindly look at all those terrorists and terrorist organizations. Are they friends of the United States? And what kind of poison they spread about the United States? Number two, there is a very clear strategic geopolitical angle there. I think one of the biggest neighbors of India is very much involved. And I think that has a certain clarity in the United States. I'm sure you understand who I am, what I am meaning. The third part, I would say, especially to the audience in the United States, is the democratic angle, the democracy. You know what kind of elections were held, the threats which the army in Pakistan has been facing. And in order to surmount those, this is being utilized, ranks are being given, other challenges, especially the democracy part, is being put behind. So I think any American policy framer, when he looks at these three aspects, I think the choice is very clear. And do keep in mind that these are the same terrorists who have threatened the United States in the past, and you have just witnessed terrorism here and can do it in the future too. So actually, India is fighting the battle on behalf of the world, especially the United States too.
Daniel, if I may come in?
Sure.
I said to Dr. Tharoor that being in America is my alma mater. So I had the opportunity to live here, study here, not just get my degree in business management, but I'm also a student of American music, American culture. And in addition to the shared values points that Ambassador Sandhu spoke about, we share democratic values, pluralistic values. I think there are other fundamentals based on which this relationship between India and the US is completely transformed. We both understand cross-border terrorism very well. We understand Pakistan-sponsored terrorism extremely well. Broadening that scope of cooperation in that area is extremely critical. That has been growing in the last few years and few decades. And that's why, to Dr. Tharoor's point, we received a very, very warm welcome on Capitol Hill. Congressmen, senators chairing the House Foreign Relations Committee, people associated with the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, the India caucus issued unequivocal, unconditional statements in support of India and condemning Pakistan. But there's also culture and people, and that relationship has also been strengthened considerably in the last 10 or 15 years. And the most critical is in the area of trade and investments. We're hopeful that a bilateral trade agreement will be concluded between both countries very soon. And I think both countries, after COVID, have begun to relook at and rethink their supply chains, look at reshoring jobs to America, to India. Both have an America first, India first policy. bring employment opportunities back to our countries. So I think the basis today of that relationship is largely in the realm of trade and investment. Okay. And I'd like to, Poonam, just quote a statistic because I think it's important for the American media to take that to the American people. Not only are Indian investments in America growing rapidly, but American investments in India have also delivered massive results to investors back home. Few examples of that, a company like Blackstone, which has deployed about $50 billion in India's real estate. Today, the second largest real estate market for Blackstone outside of America is India. They plan to double that investment in a few years. Companies like BlackRock, companies like Brookfield own primary and secondary instruments to the tune of $15 to $30 billion. So it's a very critical partnership that is based on economic cooperation and on mutual investments.
Okay, so since we're talking about trade, just yesterday Secretary Letnick said that the Trump administration is upset with some of India's policy, including purchasing arms from the Russians. Do you think Trump has a different view of the Indo-US trade relationship than his predecessors?
Yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I mean, as far as I'm aware, this may not be an entirely, shall we say, up-to-date answer because I'm not involved in none of us is involved in the trade talks, but we have actually seen a steady change in the pattern of dependence on certain weapon suppliers. Historically, yes, we were major suppliers of Russian equipment. We still need a lot of Russian spare parts and so on, but it's come down a lot from the peak. The comparison I would give you is Pakistan, where 81% of their weapon systems and imports are from China. We don't have that kind of dependence. We've diversified. We have American weaponry. We're very much in the market for more. Whatever the Americans are prepared to discuss with us and sell us, we certainly hope will move forward. We've got French weapons. We have French aircraft. We've also got a lot of Israeli equipment. So we're diversifying. It's not that we are particularly dependent on weapons from any one country, though there was a time when this comment may have been true, that is, that we were overly dependent on the Russian weapons in the days of the Soviet Union particularly. I don't think that's an accurate portrayal of the situation today. Okay.
Well, you mentioned aircraft, and the question in a lot of people's minds is how many aircraft did India lose? We do know that there was some loss of aircraft, but not how many in this latest conflict.
We're not military folks, and our military are the only ones who really keep track of all of these things. But, I think the important message that came out was, whatever may or may not have happened in the course of a conflict, neither side, by the way, talks about losses very much. And that's partially because you know very well that operational details are very closely held with the senior military people. But I can tell you one thing, whatever may or may not have happened, look what happened on what turned out to be the last night of the conflict. When India not only effectively struck 11 airfields of the Pakistani military, but there are commercially available, publicly available satellite pictures showing the extensive damage done. There's been craters on the runway, there have been operational command centers that have been bust by these Indian bombs, and just yesterday, the Pakistanis publicly admitted that Indian strikes were so wide-ranging and effective, they struck from as far as Hyderabad in South Pakistan to Peshawar in the northwest. So it looks very clear that whatever damage the Pakistanis believe they may have inflicted on India, it wasn't sufficient to prevent India from inflicting such extensive damage on Pakistan that they decided to request us to stop, which we're very happy to do.
Okay. So India's maintained that the ceasefire occurred when the Pakistani DGMO called the Indian DGMO, requesting for a cessation of hostilities. Pakistan has been playing up the role of the U.S., and President Trump, even as recent as, I guess, a couple days ago, he keeps saying that he used trade to stop the war.
That's not the impression I have. I can tell you that it was a public record that there were calls coming from various foreign ministers to our foreign minister, to our national security advisor. The US was amongst the most active in this regard, and that Secretary Rubio spoke to his Indian counterpart, Jaishankar. He also, in his second hat of NSA, spoke to his counterpart, Mr. Doval. At one point, Mr. Vance, the Vice President, called our Prime Minister. So there was a lot of calls being made, and that's true also the foreign ministers of the UAE, of Saudi Arabia, France, and so on. Many countries were concerned. My understanding is that none of these calls was trade ever mentioned, not one. And certainly our information is that from our side, we gave a consistent response throughout, which corresponds to what I've just said to all of you, that we are only taking retribution for a terrorist attack. We are not interested in prolonging this conflict. If Pakistan hits us, we will hit back because we have a right of self-defense. If Pakistan stops, we'll stop. So we didn't need persuading to stop. And that message was given regularly to everybody else who called. I know that some of this is actually out on the sort of Twitter timeline of our foreign minister. So it was an open thing that we're talking to people and letting them know we're ready to call this off anytime the others do. And the others were the ones who were prolonging it. Only Pakistan had one foot on the escalatory ladder, not India. In every case, they initiated, we retaliated. When they stopped, we stopped. That's the way that it came to an end.
So critics argue that India hasn't presented enough concrete evidence to the international community regarding Pakistan's role in the Pahalgam attack, and as per the Indian government, the success of Operation Sindoor as well. How would you respond to that? Mr. Suri, would you like to take that question?
Poonam, I think this is not the first time that Pakistan has orchestrated an attack against India and claimed to not have any role in it. The very first attack that they orchestrated was right after independence, 1947. They sent Pakistani armed military men, and they said it was Pakistani raiders who went. They said, we have nothing to do with it. But then it was the Pakistani army. This was not the first time. Even in 1998, Kargil, it was again Pakistani military which was directly involved in the aggression. But they again claimed no responsibility. So much so that when the bodies of the soldiers were retrieved, they were not ready to take them back. Can you expect, is there any other country in the world that would do that? Pathankot, we invited them to conduct a joint operation in one of our air bases, 2611 in the city of Mumbai. Joint investigation happened in Mumbai. Dossiers were presented, not just to Pakistan but to the international community. Pakistan did nothing. This time around in Pahalgam, within about 30-40 minutes after the attack, a front called the Resistance Front claimed credit for orchestrating this attack. And it was on their website for almost a whole full day until somebody in Pakistan, their handlers told them to take it down. And it was in the United Nations Security Council when the press statement was to be released. It was Pakistan, and it was at the support of China that it was removed, the reference to TRF. And the picture that has been going around on social media, where funerals of the terrorists attended by military-clad army men, is again a testimony to the deep nexus between Pakistani army, Pakistani ISI, Pakistani government and the terrorists. So this has gone on for a very long time. And I just want to, on the objective that we had set out to achieve. The first attack was with respect to the 9 terrorist bases. All the 9 terrorist bases that were attacked are on the UNSC 1267 list. It was not that India came up with a fictitious list. And the attacks on the 10th, 2 things prove India's capability. One, there are multiple satellite images available in public domain.
Right, and we've
that has been accepted. And the fact that the Pakistani DGMO called the Indian DGMO, his counterpart, and requested for a ceasefire is further proof.
So in your visits to the countries that you visited so far, have has the delegation presented more concrete evidence of Pakistan's complicity in the attack?
Look, evidence is a curious way of putting it, because in very many cases, in fact, in the bulk of the cases of the more than 40 to 50 terrorist attacks inflicted on India since the turn of the century, in every case Pakistan has denied it, and in every case their complicity has been established. Denial is standard fare for them. So you found Mumbai, 2008, where 170 people, including many American citizens, were killed in 5 locations in Mumbai. What happened? The Pakistanis said it wasn't them. Immediately, one of the killers was captured alive, and it turned out not only to be Pakistani, his family, his address, where he was trained, who trained him, everything was out there. You had the chilling recordings taken by Western intelligence agencies as well as Indian ones of the voice of the Pakistani handler giving minute-by-minute instructions to the killers in Mumbai to continue killing. This kind of evidence, plus the evidence from the interrogation Kasab, was also provided to the Pakistanis. Entire dossiers were put together.
Right.
Not one person has been prosecuted, not one person has been punished by the Pakistanis. The US, using the same evidence, has jailed David Coleman Headley for planning and plotting this attack, and Tahawoor Rana has been extradited to India, who is a Chicago-based conspirator in this particular thing. So we're showing you that despite the collection of evidence, there is actually no corrective action. So beyond the point, one piece of evidence, Poonam, is a long pattern of conduct. And don't ever forget that the Pakistanis also said they had no idea where Osama bin Laden was until he was found in a safe house right next to an army camp in a cantonment city. So Pakistan denials are not worth anything, frankly. Second is that the Resistance Front is a known proxy for the LET, the Lashkar-e-Toiba, headquartered in Pakistan. And the TRF evidence was given first, not just for this thing, but for their activities, was given first to the UN committee by India in December of 2023. So we've had repeated attempts, 4 attempts, to get the TRF listed. The fact that the TRF then claimed credit for this grotesque attack and did so in less than an hour after it took place, when most of the world didn't even know it had happened, shows their complicity. And third, frankly, our intelligence agencies don't unleash the Indian army or the Indian military without serious work. They have done their bit, and they have identified with names and photographs 4 of the 5 killers, 2 of whom are Pakistani, and 2 of whom were known to be locals who had gone to Pakistan for training 10 years ago and who clearly came back.
So
we are 100% sure we have the evidence we need. Those kinds of classified evidence that will not be shared with the public, I'm sure.
No, not with the public, but with
the intelligence agencies of friendly countries, I'm sure there's been some conversation.
But Poonam, can I answer a
Sure.
specific question? You asked us whether the countries we visited have brought this up. Firstly, nobody will bring it up because, as Dr. Tharoor mentioned, Pakistan has no international credibility. And the first response we received from anyone we've met, from Guyana to the United States, is that we understand Pakistan is a, if you want to call it a rogue state, a banana republic. And people very clearly understand that India has nothing to gain by responding to Pakistan unless there's credible evidence.
That's right.
So that point is a very critical point. That's why when you ask this question, I sometimes wonder who would be asking us to prove something against Pakistan when the whole world knows that.
All right,
from Osama bin Laden to 26/11 to being a terror haven. People understand India has a lot going for it. People understand both countries attained independence around the same time. Pakistan is today a failed state. It's dependent on IMF bailouts. India is the 4th largest economy in the world. It's growing at 6.5%. We have nothing to gain by engaging with Pakistan.
Right, thank you, Mr. Dare. I just want to keep moving to, because we have so many questions from journalists here. So David Brunstrom from Reuters, what role has the U.S. played in encouraging talks between India and Pakistan?
I think the US has understood for some time now that India has a very clear position that there will be no talks with a gun pointed at our head. It's not that we can't talk to Pakistan. I was joking the other day, we can speak all the languages they can speak. And we're very happy to dialogue with them in any of those languages. The problem is we will not dialogue with people who are pointing a gun at our heads. I mean, frankly, if your neighbor unleashes his Rottweilers to bite your children, and in fact to do worse to your children, and then says, let's talk, you think you're going to talk to him until he either unleashes those Rottweilers or locks them up in a kennel or puts them to sleep? It's as simple as that. You're not going to talk to people who are pointing guns at your temples. It's not going to happen.
We have another question from Sriram Lakshman of The Hindu. What concrete outcomes have been agreed upon or do you expect will be agreed upon from this visit in terms of U.S. actions with regard to Pakistan?
Forgive me, may I look at that? I seem to have a slight audibility problem here with what concrete outcomes have been agreed upon, I see. We aren't really here to negotiate outcomes. That's the job of the government. Our job is to enhance understanding, to clarify our position and to explain if there are any questions or misapprehensions on the part of our interlocutors. We'll be very happy to address them. There wasn't a specific seek on our part beyond that. It's not that we've come here saying, would you do this for us? That's not what this is all about. And that's true, by the way, of every country we've been to. We're just saying, this is our position, we want you to understand, and if you have any questions, we'll answer them, but that's it. We're not asking them to do anything other than to understand our point of view, to express their solidarity, and to stand with us if it happens again. I mean, we have no illusions. These buildings we've destroyed in the terror camps can be built again, 6 months, 9 months, who knows. The problem is, if they think they can keep doing this to us, they've got another thing coming, because we are not going to take it. If they hit us, we will hit them back. And we want the world to understand not only what just happened, but what could happen again if Pakistan does not control these elements on its soil.
Ambassador Sadhu, what further diplomatic or economic actions does India plan to take through institutions like the United Nations or the Financial Action Task Force?
I think there's already been public statements on that. I think most important aspect is for the entire world community to understand and urge the Pakistan leadership to move away from terrorism as part of its policy. Whatever actions need to be taken or convincing needs to be done by whoever is speaking to the leadership, since you have a parliamentary delegation from there, or whatever parliament is there, I think that needs to be told to them that it is time to come back to the Committee of Nations and look at the relationship between the United States and India. It has transformed into a partnership. You talk about healthcare, affordable healthcare. India plays an important role. Go to the CVS pharmacy and you will see. Talk about the energy partnership. Talk about IT, digital, the new emerging technologies, education. You know that the 300,000 Indian students who are here, who are 2/3 of them in STEM areas, they bring value and competitive edge to United States. That's the kind of country and participation and the relationship that is. I think everybody needs to urge the Pakistan government to move towards that, not towards using terrorists and terrorism.
We're also very happy, I think, all of us as a delegation, that the Axiom space shuttle, which will be going to the International Space Station,
Yes.
the second in command, the pilot, is an Indian Air Force pilot. And to Mr. Sandhu's point, that's what we want to export. We want to export culture, we want to export engineers, we want to export technology, and that's what we really bring to the world. It's unfortunate that a young politician from Pakistan, who should be spending more of his time in fixing his own country, is in the US defending some of those who may be responsible for assassinating his mother. So that's the reality and that's the difference.
We have, sorry.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add something to the previous question. You keep talking, and we hear this a lot from people who are well-meaning. And why don't you talk to the Pakistan? Who do we talk to? See, it's not that we haven't tried this before. We've talked to them many times. And there was a period between 2003 and 2008 where we were talking both publicly, privately, and through a famous back channel, famous later, between a special envoy of the Prime Minister of India and the general running Pakistan, General Musharraf. With all of this, in 2008, we had a very, very pro-peace government in Pakistan, led by President Zardari. His foreign minister, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, was in Delhi to sign a generously liberalized visa agreement with India when the terrorists struck in 26/11. So we're discovering the people we talk to are either unable or unwilling to control the elements who are hurting us. So if you have talking to a civilian government, and the civilian government doesn't even know that the military is up to sending and dispatching terrorists across the border to kill us, who do we talk to? Why should we talk?
Okay. Our next question is from Paul Beckett, who's a National Press Club member, and he spent a decade as the Wall Street Journal's South Asia Bureau Chief and Asia Editor. He's asked, how much was India's military response designed to send a message to China, which supports Pakistan, about the capabilities of the Indian military?
What was India's?
How much was India's military response designed to send a message to China, which supports Pakistan?
I wouldn't speculate on the intentions. Our response was to hit the enemy that was hitting us, which happened to be Pakistan. The fact that they were using Chinese weapons and we were bypassing some of the Chinese radar defenses and the famous sort of Chinese network system, where apparently the Chinese system is that they lock into the other side's aircraft. The radar immediately sends a signal to the plane that sends an immediate launch instruction to the missile. It all comes, and that's supposed to be the great sort of Chinese kill chain we read about in the newspapers. So I don't think that when India decided to bypass some of those threats and hit the airfields it did on the 9th, 10th night, I don't think they were worrying about who gets the message. They want to make sure that the Pakistanis got the message and they got the rough end of what we were sending them, which they did. And frankly, I think many of us feel very proud of our defense forces for having done this. I think those whose job it is to study comparative weapon systems, which is not our preoccupation, they can draw conclusions for themselves. But I do believe that what happened on the night of the 9th, 10th speaks for itself, and even more so, the immediate reaction of the Pakistanis the next morning to call off the conflict also speaks very vividly for itself, and maybe that's the message the Chinese will have to look at. But I don't want to speculate about China.
Also, not to forget how the stock market performed.
All right. So a lot of people that I talk to who don't know much about India and Pakistan, but they do know that both are nuclear armed. There's fear in a lot of people that, India and Pakistan tensions flare up regularly. They're both armed nuclear nations. So how seriously is the threat of nuclear engagement being taken, and what steps are being pursued to ensure such a scenario is avoided?
Okay, first of all, as I say, don't talk about tensions between India and Pakistan. Frankly, we have no tension.
ओहो, लाइट चली गई। पहले पुरानी मशीन बंद हो जाती और फिर मच्छर की वजह से बच्चा उठ जाता।
लेकिन अब ये परेशानी नहीं। पुराने गुड नाइट के मुकाबले नया गुड नाइट बना है ऐसे एडवांस्ड फॉर्मूला से जो चले बिजली जाने के 2 घंटे बाद तक।
नया गुड नाइट लिक्विड।
Dismantle their terror infrastructure, right? So please don't. There's a big flaw in some of these assumptions that there is equivalence between India and Pakistan as if they're two sides of a chain. The fact is that there can be no equivalence between terrorists and their victims. There can be no equivalence between a country that's needling another country and sending terrorists across to bleed it with a death by 1,000 cuts, in the famous phrase of a Pakistani general, and those who are trying to defend their own territory, their own sovereignty, their own people. There is no equivalence. So as far as we're concerned, please don't think of it in those terms at all. But since you've asked, the bottom line is, we in all our actions have acted so responsibly that we are a long way shy of anything remotely approaching a nuclear threshold. When I say that our first strikes were only at terror bases, we did not even hit any Pakistani military installations until they started sending missiles and drones our way. That's when we responded. Till then, we didn't. So we are not doing, and look, you've seen a Russia-Ukraine war. One of the countries is a nuclear weapon. They've been fighting for 2.5 years. There's been far more devastation and destruction taking place, and yet there has been no resort to nuclear threats or nuclear weapons or whatever. I think that India-Pakistan is way, way, way short of that. We're talking in this case about an 88-hour conflict. We didn't even engage any ground troops. I don't think either country was able to penetrate the airspace of the other. It was drones, missiles, artillery shells, this sort of stuff. And it was a battle in some ways also between defense systems, in which I'm pleased to say we seem to have come out of it rather better, because there are no reports of any extensive damage in India, whereas lots and lots of downed drones and downed missiles have been found on the ground. None of them have done any major damage. So if you want to compare defense systems, that's maybe the more interesting comparison, not nuclear systems.
Could you elaborate on the nature of recent conversations between India and China in the context of maintaining regional peace and security?
Well, recently I would not say there have been any significant conversations. There was a significant thaw in the tense relationship between our countries, starting with September of 2024, when our foreign minister met his counterpart, our national security advisor met his counterpart, the generals on both sides talked to each other, and there was a certain agreement reached to ease some of the tensions on the border that had begun when China killed 20 of our soldiers on the border in June 2020. Now that process of thawing had begun barely 7 months ago, when this particular unpleasant terrorist incident and subsequently the conflict with Pakistan, even for a few days, erupted, during which time China was unconditionally supporting its all-weather friend, Pakistan, including in the Security Council on things like the statement one of my colleagues has mentioned. So I don't think that we've had much cause to talk to them very recently. But the earlier process of thawing reflected a strategic choice on the part of both countries to dial down tensions and cooperate. And I think they will now have to see whether in the wake of what has happened, one can just go back to business as usual, or whether further discussion and dialogue is required. I think this is a process which at the moment is beyond the remit of my colleagues in this delegation and may. But I can say that there was a process that was very positive along the lines that your question asks, but it didn't frankly get revived after the 22nd of April.
Ambassador Sandhu, in the context of the Quad, do you believe India's participation has translated into strategic support during security crises, or does it remain largely a maritime and economic framework?
See, the Quad has been a developing story. You know from where it came and how it has moved. It's a much wider partnership. I think during the COVID period we saw, and that process is moving ahead. From what I have read, the next foreign ministers meeting is going to take place in Washington soon. And there are a number of clear projects, especially in technology and many other areas, healthcare, that Quad is undertaking. So I presume that will continue further. And that process, which began years ago,